Rishi Sunak at his lowest satisfaction rating to date. He's refused to rule out the possibility of Nigel Farage joining the Tory party when he comes out of the jungle. This comes after political stalwart Stanley Johnson insisted that the former UKIP leader could help turn around the party's flagging fortunes. So with Nigel's I'm a Celeb stint continuing for another day at least, I caught up with the Tory MP Jonathan Gullis earlier and asked if GBNews' very own Brexit broker could be the man to save the future of the Conservative Party.
Lots of talk about Nigel Farage joining the Conservative Party. Do you think he should?
I'd love to see it, Patrick, personally. I think Nigel has an awful lot to offer. Number one, he is a big voice on the key issues like immigration that we know are a huge number one, and if not number two issue for Conservative voters, particularly those in 2019, and particularly those in the red wall like Stoke-on-Trent kids who haven't talked, I'm proud to serve. Secondly, I think he's actually an asset across the blue wall and the red wall. In essence, he's able to communicate in a way that many politicians aren't able to. Probably no one closer to having the ability other than Boris Johnson to be able to get a message across clearly and concisely. So I really do hope that he comes forward and he joins, and I'd be very happy to welcome him.
I mean, it sounds like you think he might make quite a good leader.
Look, I like Nigel a lot, and of course, if he wants to become leader of the Conservative Party, he's got a long way to go. Got to become a member, got to find a constituency, run to be elected. He's then got to get through the first round of electorate, which is the party MPs, and then he's got to win the membership, although I think that would probably be an easier one than the MPs round, personally. But I've certainly got no gripes about Nigel, as I say, joining the Conservative Party, but I also respect the fact that we've got Rishi Sunak as the leader of our party right now.
Okay. I mean, would you like to see him maybe even not as Prime Minister, but in a couple of other positions there? You mentioned migration, for example. We've seen today with James Cleverly saying he'd be quite happy to see net migration reduced by 300,000. I mean, I think that would still put us at around the 372,000 a year mark. I think it's fair to say that Nigel wouldn't settle for that kind of stuff. How would you feel about that?
Well, look, first of all, I'd be delighted with the fact that James Cleverly has announced the announcements he made today, the New Conservatives, which I co-founded with Danny Kruger and Miriam Cates, for a 12-point plan. Some of those have been adopted by the government today, so I'm glad to know that we're being listened to in that regard. But of course, we can't allow 300 plus still to be net migration. We do need to actually deliver on the tens of thousands, and maybe, just maybe, the Conservatives put Nigel Farage in the House of Lords, and we've now got Lord Cameron as Foreign Secretary, so I've got no issue with Lord Farage as Home Secretary in the future or in any other department if that was an easier way to get him into government quicker, because I think he would take no nonsense, he would take no prisoners, he would call out the civil service for what they are at times, which are blockers to actual government policy, and make sure that we deliver on the priorities of the British public.
You mentioned that there might be a bit of pushback when it comes to becoming leader of the Conservative Party, mainly from Conservative MPs. Why do you think that is?
I think it's fair to say, Patrick, that the One Nation caucus in the Conservative Party is probably the largest caucus within the Conservative Parliamentary Party. And whilst I've got many friends who are very good Conservatives in that area, I do find that they tend to fall into believing that centrism is everything and that centrism is where we should remain. And my big issue with that is that centrism is more about tinkering than actually radical change and radical progress, which is what the British public voted for in 2016 when they voted for Brexit, and what they voted for under Boris Johnson in 2019 when it came to the levelling up agenda and really bringing about a new way forward, investing in our public services, but also giving people tough law and order, tough border control to really demonstrate that Britain is a mighty nation once again. So I think sadly that too many of my colleagues fall into what I call apologetic conservatism, almost feeling that we have to be liked or nice all the time. And ultimately in politics, you have to make tough decisions. You can't always be liked. You won't always make the popular decision, but most of the time you're trying to make the right one. And I think that's what Nigel is unafraid to do.
Do you think Nigel could win you a general election?
I think, to be fair, against Sir Keir Starmer, I think that we could win an election with Nigel, with Rishi Sunak, with whoever, because ultimately I think that we've got a Labour Party that's incredibly weak, that has no actual policies. I watched Yvette Cooper today, Patrick, trying to talk tough about immigration, trying to, I suppose, bring her Thatcherite credentials like Sir Keir Starmer did shamelessly at the weekend. But you watch those backbenchers, they were squirming all over the place because they don't want to talk about immigration, because they actually have no issue with it, because they still support free movement, something that Sir Keir Starmer campaigned to bring back as leader of the Labour Party back in 2020. So, at the end of the day, I think we've got a huge opportunity here to pounce on a Labour Party that is still just very much saying we're not the Conservatives without offering any solutions to the big problems of the day, and effectively will probably find a way of trying to rejoin the EU through the back door in order to try and window dress and make us believe that they're doing something else. So, I think that we're in a really good spot against the Labour Party that is very weak, but we just haven't done enough things to convince the British public that we're credible and we're able to deliver, and that is the bone of my frustration right now.